The guy in the back with the Disco Danny collar on there.
That is an article of clothing that whoever designed that did not go to church. Anyway, so it was not a God-fearing person. Anyway, so our first question with this is where did your faith journey begin? Where does your life in Christ start?
Well, as you said earlier, I was fortunate enough, my parents, your grandparents, reared us in the church. I mean, we were going from early age, and I don't guess I don't have any great story. I never ventured that far off the path. I pat myself on the back. I wobbled a little bit in college, I guess, maybe a little bit. Like.
Oh, you mean like a college student?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Kind of like that.
Yeah.
And, but just really fortunate, I guess, that right after college, trying to find a career and everything. But then, I've got into education and teaching, met my wife through that, and then we've just kind of carried it forward.
So at what point do you realize, because you're raised by two parents that are very religious people, but also, and I'm sure it kind of plays in after the fact. Your father is a YMCA planter when you're young, and so like you already have this kind of association of like sports and faith. Those two things do go together. At what point do you, I guess before we get way into that, but at what point do you realize that basketball is not just a passion or something that you truly enjoy? When is the moment that you, because I guess a lot of people that, especially those that go to college for sports, you have that moment where you're like, look, I like doing all these things, but I can do this, and this will help me go to school or whatever.
Yeah, there's actually a couple things, and I think thanks for saying that about my dad. Dad ran the YMCA. Now it's called the Y. I guess it's more politically correct, but it is the Young Men's Christian Association, and Dad was that's what drew him to it when he came back from Korea. So I was fortunate enough to just always have not just basketball, but all sports around us all the time. But my senior year at Emory and Henry, I didn't play basketball. I had an internship coming up in the spring, and so I dropped out of the program, and the coach at the time, this is my freshman year, but Coach Johnson came in my sophomore year. I remained close with all my life, but he came in, and my senior year, he said, I know you don't, you've got other things on the horizon and so forth, and he had brought in some younger guys, and I'd kind of not really gotten recruited over, but yeah, I got recruited over. So
I'm not going to toot my own horn, but
so anyway, there were some other players in the fold, and he wanted me to travel with the team and do some stuff. So there's two things that happened in that process. He had me read this book by Dean Smith, who was the coach at North Carolina, if you don't know anything about basketball, but I'm not a North Carolina fan. I just want to put that out there for disclosure. I did get beat yesterday once again, and it's a beautiful thing. So anyway, he gave me this book, and I started reading the stats, and I'm a pretty math-related guy, and I'd never thought of basketball in that way, and so that was taking place, and then over Christmas that year, Dad ran the Y, and YBL was a big thing, big centerpiece of it, and I was refereeing some games while I was home from Christmas break, and there was 4-team league in this particular league, and one of the teams was, after 2 weeks, was not nearly as good as the other three. And the coach quit, and he blamed Dad, and he said, you stacked the teams, blah, 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 blah. And so Dad came to me, and he said, you know what, would you take this team over? And I said, yeah, I'll do it. I knew a couple of the kids from having been a lifeguard at the pool and stuff, and they came to the pool, and they were good kids, and I worked with them a couple of times that week, and can't really remember. I remember Saturday morning we showed up, and that guy one of his kids was on the team, so I guess he was kind of over in the corner, I'm getting ready to laugh, and I can't remember where we either won or we came close to winning first week, and then we won the rest of our games after that. And so the two things kind of hand in hand, I guess. That's a long one.
Can we go to the next picture there?
Yeah, that's them.
Look how enthused you are to be bringing these young people up in godly love and teaching them the way.
And those shorts are coming back in style.
I was gonna say, man, those I would make a joke, but yeah, like those are people wear those again. But you know, I make a joke, but I guess that is kind of there has to be something in that there's a kind of a point where you realize that not only are you obviously you've taken this team that was quote much worse than the rest and won some games, but there has to be something in that where you start to realize how much impact you can have in children's lives and in people's lives coaching, right?
Yeah, and we didn't keep that picture. Keaton, my oldest son, went up to mom and dad's, and that's one of the, they didn't keep a whole lot of pictures through the years, but that was one of the pictures I thought was strange, but it kind of took me back, and Dad's told that story a couple of times, so it's kind of,
There's just so much joy in that face.
Yeah. It was early Saturday morning, you know. I am a college kid there, you remember that now.
Yeah, right. So if we move on, so this now we lead into, we're getting into kind of the good stuff here. So you moved to Bedford, and you begin coaching, and so I guess we'll start with the kind of what are you stepping into? Like, how do you view this as? Are you at a point at this point in time where your mission in life is to bring up young men to be good Christians that you know care for their communities and their families, or at this point are you still kind of like that's kind of in the back of your mind, but really what you're focusing on is really it's just about let's be better at basketball right now.
Right. Now this particular picture I think was my last year there, and this was a pretty good team. The guy in the guy in the middle, number 42 there, he was the best player on that team, and he went on to the Air Force Academy and played. All this has meaning. I was just telling him this like 3 or 4 weeks ago. My youngest son is a graduate student at UVA, and Caleb called and the three of us went to a basketball game together. So we still, I still keep in contact with several of these guys. But I was going to go back the relational piece. My first year there was kind of a blur because we hadn't been married very long, and I didn't get the job till it was almost time for school. Right. So the school hadn't won but like 8 games maybe the prior 3 or 4 years combined, and so there was not a lot of expectation, which was good for a young guy like me. But I had expectations. I'm not going to lie. It took me a while to become a good teacher in the classroom because I figured they were going to hire me to teach because I was God's gift to coaching, and I told people that. So, but anyway, that also became a big piece of it. I was pushed along and ended up. I had several of these kids in pre-calculus. I am teaching AP Calculus and Algebra 2, and that was the piece that was where the relationships came in. Really, I mean, they saw me. I took it very seriously, and those guys, I guess you're, prototypical coach, you roll the balls out and whatever, game day, you're going to watch film or, some movie in the classroom and getting ready for it. We never did that. I remember the state championship, we were playing at the Vine Center at Liberty at the time, and so the morning I had 2 of my really good players in class, and we had a game at 1:30, but I had them at 8:30, and we were going to go leave at whatever, and so they're like, "What are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean?" I'm getting my podium out, and I'm old school. I never used overheads or any of that stuff. I just wrote on the chalkboard. That's what I did. And so, again, and they said, "We got a game this afternoon." I said, "Yeah, we do, and we got class right now. We're getting ready to do calculus." But the second year, just an addendum. The second year was when we really kind of, I guess, to go back all the way to answer your questions, when the relationship piece, because I had several seniors on that first team. And probably would have done differently. You asked me that earlier. Probably would have done differently. Not that they were bad players or anything, but just building for the future type of thing. And the next year, we won our first game and then lost 19 in a row. We were 1-19. And but lost several games. But a funny thing happened that year, and I don't think it was by coincidence. I mean, the crowd, the year before we had people would come, parents, and that's about it. But as the year went on, more people started coming, and it was, I thought, is this just me? But I'd always ask the athletic director on Monday, I said, well, ticket sales seem to, he said, yeah, you sold, 10 more or 15 more, or, that was a good crowd, and blah, blah, and it kept like that. And then the last game of the year, we were at Appomattox High School, and we got beat right at the end of the game, and so I'm talking to the coaches out on the floor before we go in. I said, guys, this is really important. This is going to be like I'm not getting any pressure. I didn't feel like I had any pressure, but I did have the superintendent's son on that team. So we got to figure some stuff out going in this off season because this is kind of like a do or die thing for me. But at the same time, we got to get these kids. It's got to matter more to them. Just their whole, taking pride in everything they do. In the classroom, everything's got to matter more to them. But my assistants kind of looked at me and said, "Well, Coach, I think we're on the right path here. You'll be surprised." And then we locked in the locker room, getting ready to, and I don't know what I'm going to tell these guys because Liberty was very much a baseball school at the time, so I figured most of them were getting ready. We walked in there and they're just bawling. They didn't want the season to be over. And then at that point, I think I kind of flipped over because I said, it's not all about going 25-0 or whatever. It's, the things that happen on Saturday morning at 8 o'clock while we're practicing, have a little juice and donuts afterwards, having those type of conversations, what's going on in your life. That was, I know, it was a kind of roundabout way to get to it.
Well, no, but you actually lead to this perfectly because you start to realize the value of the relationship and you start to realize how you actually build it. And that's really important. But you told me a story about a big loss. That kind of, because again, you mentioned that kind of, it's not really necessarily just about what happens on the court. I think I will at least say this for myself. Like those of us who are into sports have a tendency to think that whether we win or lose changes anything about our lives, and that it's a problem, or that God cares. That's my favorite one. Is that I've never seen somebody win an MVP award and not thank God for it, because God cares that you scored 30 points a game. But you use that relationship. You told me the story. You use that relationship to kind of go against that feeling that God, for God to love you, you have to win. Like really, that's how God shows you love. Like, and how does that come about? How did that actually happen?
I don't know. As you said earlier, my grandmother's, has been all her life a beautiful Christian lady, or my mom, or my grandmother both are, but my mom, and she would call and I'm praying for you to win tonight. My standard answer is, Mom, pretty sure he doesn't care who wins this game. Just does not. Pray for us to remain healthy, and and nothing obviously catastrophic is going to happen to any of the kids, and that they have fun, and then I'm a good role model for them. That's what I want you to pray, and that's kind of where that is. I think you have to to steal Tony Bennett's line, coach at UVA. I think you have to have guys that you can lose with. That's what he always says. You have to have guys you can lose with before you can really win. And I don't think he's talking. Well, I kind of know he's not talking about winning the national championship. He's talking about the ultimate prize. And if you notice in that picture right there, it was kind of neat. I was taken at the Vine Center, but I didn't really. I sent that to Chip, and then I said, "Oh, wait a minute! I didn't realize that little sign was in the background, but that was kind of neat."
Yeah, I've seen that picture many times, and until you sent that to me earlier this week, and I was like, isn't that special that that's there? But yeah, that's actually, this is kind of one of those rewards that comes out of it, where you're like, it's not you win because God cares. It was that you had this opportunity, that you've built in these values that are innately Christian. These values of compassion and humility and grace, and then it leads to this. So go ahead. Well,
I was going to say a couple things about that picture. It must have been the first year I was at the gentleman right to my right was Andrew Kelso, who was my top assistant, and then the guy next to him was named Ray Brawley, and he was the captain of the 1-19 team. Mm-hmm. And so this was the year either his senior in college, he sat on the bench with us, and I went down to him right before, this was state championship, and that's my oldest son who was in church with us here a few weeks ago, if you remember. He's 6'6" now. I couldn't hold him.
You remember the really, really tall guy.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I had told those guys, we were at state championships, and a guy that we went to summer camp with, the first thing he did was grab his kid, and picked him up, after the state championship. I said, that's going to be us here in a few years, and they're looking at me like I'm crazy, but it just turns out. So that's why you'll find a picture or something similar to that at my house. But Ray was the first person I hugged as the clock was winding down, and I just thanked him for everything, his belief in not just me, but his just being the person he was.
Yeah. Well, and so actually, that's you've started to have this chance to, you've built relationships, like we said, you've had a chance to build relationships with the players that are on this team, obviously, but you know, with the guys before, and you have a chance to mentor and all of that. You know, obviously winning state championships and everything, that's, you know, lovely to have those accolades and everything with it. But, you know, is there that moment where you have to kind of remind yourself that really the only reason I got here in the first place was because I had this humbling experience of being 1 in 19 or whatever. Is there kind of that, what is it that kind of like reminds you? Because again, 2 in a row. It was 97 and 98, 2 in a row, back-to-back AA state championships. Yeah, and there's the second one against a familiar team. But you know, you get those back-to-back championships. Is there a moment where like maybe you almost forgotten the lesson in the first place and you kind of need that humbling again, or you know, is there that experience that's kind of a reminder that like, I don't have all this figured out, and really the more important stuff is going on. This really didn't matter that much, even though it was wonderful and fun.
Well, about this was, like I said, this was the second year, and about this time I'd kind of wanted to coach in college. And it was hard to get my head in a room at this time. I'm not going to lie. I mean, my ego was huge at this time, because I just didn't think, the only time we got beaten this 2-year strand was Oak Hill Academy.
Right.
And
who like half of them were pros.
Yeah, and we played with